So our scripture reading today ties right into that from Luke 2, verses 41 to 52. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for Passover. And when Jesus was 12 years old, they all went there as usual for the celebration. After Passover, his parents left, but they didn't know that Jesus had stayed on in the city. They thought he was traveling with some other people, and they went a whole day before they started looking for him. When they couldn't find him with their relatives and friends, they went back to Jerusalem and started looking for him there. 3 days later, they found Jesus sitting in the temple, listening to the teachers and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was surprised at how much he knew and at the answers he gave. When his parents found him, they were amazed. His mother said, "Son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been very worried, and we have been searching for you." Jesus answered, "Why did you have to look for me? Didn't you know that I'd be in my Father's house?" But they didn't understand what he meant. Jesus went back to Nazareth with his parents and obeyed them. His mother kept on thinking about all that had happened. Jesus became wise and he grew strong. God was pleased with him, and so were the people. John, we're looking forward to hearing your message this morning.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be in your church this morning. I was thinking about how a year ago, it was about a little over a year ago, I presented a sermon from the old chapel at Camp Valaqua, and we were all online, and now I'm here, and maybe, hopefully, the next time we'll all be here together. Baby steps, we'll think of it that way. When I started looking at this scripture and thinking about what the story was, I had a strong sense of déjà vu. I was thinking about calling. And I've written and talked about calling before, and I'll likely write and think about it and talk about it again. The topic of calling is such a huge part of what happens at camp, and I don't think I'll ever grow bored of it. If you've listened to me talk before, you'll likely hear familiar stories, but I think they're still so important. The first thing that struck me when I was reading this was, admittedly a bit cheekily, a sense of relief. I'm not a perfect parent, but I'm really glad to see that even Mary, the mother of Jesus, forgot her kids sometimes. I feel pretty bad when I'm late to pick up my kids from school, but I've yet to lose them for 4 days, and so we'll consider that a win and knock on wood because there's still time. What struck me next is that Jesus would feel so confident and comfortable in the temple that he wouldn't miss his parents. I grew up from when I was a young boy until I was about 16, we lived in Akron, Pennsylvania. And one of the things that we would do routinely there is go to a farmer's market on Friday nights called the Green Dragon. And it was a huge event, and there was carnival games, and there was tons and tons of merchants selling different things, and there was food, and there was all sorts of things. And it sprawled over several acres. It was a big facility, big outdoor event. One Friday night, when I was about the same age of Jesus in the story, I was walking through Green Dragon with my parents, and then I was walking without my parents, and I had no idea where they went. And I proceeded to pretty much panic. I spent the next hour or two doing everything I could think of to reunite with my parents, and ultimately had a brainwave that if I found the car, they'd eventually find me. And my dad walks on crutches, and so I knew we were parked in a handicapped parking spot beside one of the buildings, and so I circled all of the buildings until I found our car, and I waited there for my parents to find me. My whole mission during that time was to get back to my parents. We expect our kids to miss us, too. One of the things I do a lot of at camp is deal with homesickness. Even when camp is fun and great during the day, it's sometimes hard not to have mom and dad with you or there to tuck you into bed at night. I've spent a lot of hours and dark evenings reading stories and talking about favorite things with kids of all ages as we try to navigate the hours between the last fun thing and the next fun thing. Jesus being so comfortable in the temple makes me think of a story of a mom dropping her son off at camp and asking if she can call him. It was a couple years ago. We made arrangements for her to call at meal times because that's when the kids are in the lodge, and call she did. She called every meal. And each meal, I would go and find her son, and I would bring him to the office, and she would ask for updates, and he would tell her what was going on. And by Tuesday at lunch, the conversations were getting quieter and shorter, and Mom, after one of the conversations, asked to speak to me, and she was worried. Is he doing all right? Is he having fun? I was pretty sure he was. So I went and talked with his counselor and confirmed that he seems to be doing well. And it was at supper that evening when the son informed his mom, "Mom, I'm having fun. Don't call so much. I just want to play with my friends." We shifted the calls to once a day, and the rest of the week went great. Sometimes parents get kids sick too. As I thought about this story more, what really struck me, what I really felt called to talk about, was the fact that the temple let him stay. They must have fed him and found him a place to sleep. The thought of a 12-year-old Jesus being taken seriously by religious scholars is one that I have trouble wrapping my brain around. One of the questions that I face regularly as a camp professional, and I always put that in quotation marks because I feel like a lot of what I do is just play with kids, but as a camp professional, there's the quotation marks again, one of the questions I get regularly is, how do we engage kids with church when they come back from camp? I'm really glad for the question because it belies an intention, but it's tough to answer. Having youth usher on Sunday mornings and participate in special music is good and valuable, but do we have youth in the room when we discern our faith tenets or when we hire a new pastor? Jesus experienced a temple that took him seriously. He talked to religious leaders that listened and engaged and were willing to spend at least 3 days in earnest conversation with a 12-year-old boy. They treated him like a traveling scholar. I wonder what the story of Jesus' ministry would be if the elders at the temple hadn't taken him seriously. Would things have been different if the elders had treated Jesus as a child with only childish things to say? How would Jesus' ministry have developed if people had laughed at him or smirked in condescension? One of the things we strive to do at Valaqua is to create a place where children are heard. We've worked hard over many years to create a culture where being present with campers is paramount. Being present and acknowledging the humanity of our campers creates a place where campers feel safe to explore and ask questions. We try to take these questions seriously and answer them earnestly. We try to be the temple that cared for Jesus. We blow it sometimes, but we try. When we get it right, kids feel safe at camp. They dig into hard questions, and they explore who they are and who they want to become. I've watched this work in my own family. I have 3 boys, 2 13-year-olds and a 17-year-old, and they attend a small-town rural school where most of their classmates have different values than we do. If I stretch my own memory back to being 13 years old, I can almost remember how tough it is being a teenager. Making and keeping friends, finding and solidifying an identity, and figuring out who you are, combined with the physical changes, make it an incredibly tumultuous time. My kids all tolerate the school year with the promise of camp in the future. Camp is their touchstone and their great reset. They look forward to it in a way that I am proud of as a camp director. That made last summer really tough. I often joke that camp would be so easy if it weren't for the campers, but having had a chance to test the theory, I can now say without reservation that it doesn't hold up. Canceling camp last summer left our family with a huge hole that we couldn't quite figure out how to fill. Don't get me wrong, we found some joy in family time in the quiet, but it didn't come close to making up for the lack of a supportive and intentional camp community. At one point, our family sat down around the campfire and played a few camp songs and mostly just made ourselves sad. We missed you all terribly. But more than that, we missed what we build together each summer. The string of sad messages from camper families who found ways to engage with camp in other ways, either by coming for walks or volunteering in the garden, showed that this hole was bigger than just our little house. Lots of us were mourning the camp program, and it was tough. Our staff team met virtually once a week through the spring and summer, I think mostly just to see each other's faces. What we missed was a community who joyfully take each other seriously. A community who listens to not only 12, but 8 and 6 and 19-year-olds and takes what they say at face value. A community that engages earnestly in the questions and challenges of our youth and children. A temple that treats a transient 19-year-old as a visiting scholar. Campers who experience this connection get hooked. They come back year after year and feel real spiritual growth at camp. I have proudly listened to many baptismal stories where camp features prominently in the faith stories of our youth. Campers who experience this community and really dig into it engage and grow into staff members. Those staff learn to become spiritual leaders in their own communities. No less than 4 of the staffers that I have worked with over the years have gone on to lead other camps, and many, many more have gone on to mentor and lead children and youth in other environments. Teachers and Sunday school teachers and people within the Mennonite Church Alberta Assembly. The young leaders you see are almost all camp connected. What I take from this is a realization that we need to learn to be the temple. We need to become the elders that listen earnestly to 12-year-old sages. We need our temple to be a place where children and youth can engage and wrestle with tough questions. Doing this is hard. I once heard a wise man say that we must sacrifice some of our comfort for the betterment of the generations that surround us. And I think that holds true. One of the key tenets in how this works at camp is that each summer we take the whole camp, the program and the facility, and we turn it over to our youth. I don't mean this metaphorically. We turn the leadership of the program for children over to slightly older children. This is hard for me. I've been doing camp for a really long time. In camp years, I'm pretty much a dinosaur. I know I don't look it, but it's true. And I have tried and tested ideas about what works. Turning the ownership of the program over sometimes means allowing things to happen that I don't think will work. For the record, I've been proven wrong enough times to stay really, really humble. This doesn't mean letting a bunch of kids run totally wild, though I'll admit at this exact moment that sounds kind of awesome. But rather, it means setting up guardrails and then testing the system. This creates wild ownership. In one of my first summers at Camp Valaqua, I had a staffer corner me and let me know in no uncertain terms that this was their place and that I better not mess it up. I hope I haven't. I hope it's still their place. What might this mean in the church? Sometimes this might mean singing unfamiliar music. Sometimes it might mean reconsidering our ideas in light of a new perspective. Sometimes it might mean surrendering some control of our building or our worship. As I referenced before, the wise man that said, we need to sacrifice some of our comfort for the generations above and below us. If we all thought that way, we would create more ownership and engagement. So I'll leave it with you. I know your kids, they tell me they have a voice. Maybe they said that in your own room too, in your own living room too. It's hard to tell. But it's great to see that happening, and I encourage you to continue to walk down that path. And I hope that we can all continue to joyfully take each other seriously. Thanks.